All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Rob Siegel. I'm an instructor in entertainment business. I teach entertainment market research. And we're here with Jacques Thelemaque, who's going to let us know all about him. So can we start off, Jacques, about telling everyone who you are, where you came from?
Where I came from. Um, I'm a filmmaker. I think of myself as a filmmaker first and foremost. But I started an organization called Filmmakers Alliance about 25, a little over 25 years ago. And it is a community in which filmmakers come and lend support to each other. And we facilitate peer-to-peer support, but also go out and find resources and relationships and stuff that benefit the community. It was a smaller offline community for many, many, many years. We met in person, we did things in person, we worked on each other's projects. And then, of course, a few years ago, it became more of an online thing, and people would, you're still making your films offline, of course, but people were connecting mostly online. We weren't having as many face-to-face meetings. And then with COVID, it's just like everything's just online and Zoom. But the idea is still the same. Things have been a little quiet during COVID. People aren't doing production, so we're not doing as much. And we're funded by sponsorship primarily. And those sponsorships are tied to events. So we haven't been able to have events. So we're sort of on a, on low. We're not cooking right now. We're just kind of keeping low profile.
But you're still supporting each other in any way you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the basic premise is still the same. When somebody needs something, it's my job to help facilitate support for them. So the way we find out about projects is, people join and they introduce themselves to the community via the website. It's a community platform, and then when they need stuff, they just ask for it. Sometimes they'll send it out to the members themselves. There's a place for them to do that, and other times they'll send it to me, and then I'll send it out via email to all the members. Depends on what the request is, especially if it's a paid gig. Like, we make sure everybody finds out about that.
Now, getting back to when you started Filmmakers Alliance, I know your backstory, but you found yourself in Los Angeles when?
I came to LA in 1980 for film school. I went to USC the first year as a screenwriting major, and then I transferred to UCLA. And because they were just doing different kinds of work at the time, this was 1980, a long time ago. USC was sort of a place for developing talent for the studio system. And that I wasn't really interested in that. And UCLA was much more sort of indie, shaggy dog. Didn't have the resources and all the pretty stuff that USC had, but it was just more aesthetically in line with what I wanted to do. So then I moved over to there, and one of my professors there insisted that I go back to USC and get a little more production education. And I didn't think you could do that, but he was pretty dialed in, and he made a recommendation, and they brought me back as a production major at USC. But I didn't finish. I just went for like a year and a half, and I got bored with school. You're in LA and people are making stuff all around you. You're like, why am I going to school? I go out and just start making stuff. And pretty much that's what we did.
And what was the moment that spurred you to create Filmmakers Alliance?
Well, right out of college, I was fortunate enough to one of my UCLA professors was just starting to transition from being a professor to sort of a talent manager. She was taking a lot of her writers and helping them get representation, helping them get jobs, setting up projects. She was producer on a couple of sort of bigger studio projects. And I wrote a script at the very end of my time in college and gave it to her, and she really loved it. And she gave it to an agent at William Morris, and he signed me immediately and got me a writing gig at Imagine. And then from that was a 3-picture deal. And then I got a bunch of writing gigs, just I had a job. I was working as a writer, like a sort of rewrite specialist. It's just a young hack, essentially. Mostly projects that probably weren't going to get made, but they wanted to try and take them to the next level. Nothing I wrote during that time ever got produced that I know of. There's a couple things that came out under different names that were almost the exact same story from that studio I was working at. So I was like, I wonder if that's it. Who knows? My name wasn't on it, and none of my work was visible. So, but I wasn't enjoying it. Like, I was making money, that's nice, and I could feel like I was a Hollywood dude, whatever. Like, that's not what I came here for. I wanted to make like movies that meant something to me, at least. And then I met my wife, and she was very much had an indie spirit. Let's do it ourselves. Let's stop making crap and let's do some good stuff. And so we knew a bunch of other people like me who were doing things in the film industry, but they weren't making their own films. So we got like 8 of us together and said, let's just help each other make films. And at the time we were just thinking shorts, let's just make shorts and help each other on there. And that's basically how it started. We came up with the name, and it was a true collective. Like, we all worked on each other's stuff. We all worked on this person's, then we all worked on that person's. And we were very prolific. Like, we were cranking out stuff every month. And each project brought new people. So 8 became 40 very quickly, 40 became 100. And we soon realized, well, we have to sort of create some structure for this community, because it's just not working. No longer can we be a collective where everybody has a voice, because nothing was getting done that way. And I was doing the bulk of the work because I started it with my wife, and she was happy to let me. She was like sort of the visionary and let me do all the functionary stuff. So I said, if I'm going to continue to do this, I'm cool with any other structure, but if you want me to carry the load, then I have to be able to make the decisions. And like, let's create a structure that, we have an executive structure, And so, so then I became president of the company, and then we started doing all these other things. We got very ambitious.
Now, an area I want to go to with the conversation is to talk about how you sustain Filmmakers Alliance. But I also want to say, when I believe the time I really remember meeting you is when we did a thing for your feature. So can you go into how that came about?
Which feature?
The Dog Walker.
Oh, what was the screening?
We did a screening for it. I might have met you with George here and there beforehand.
Oh, yeah. No. You guys did the you did oh yeah. So
we did an audience recruited screening.
Yeah.
For response.
Again, we were doing a lot of shorts, and we just expanded and got much bigger, and the projects got bigger, and money started to come, and everybody started to become more ambitious about what they were doing with their film. It wasn't no longer just us making our stuff that we wanted to make. It was like, I want to be a serious filmmaker, and I want to make a film that's going to have a life in this world. And so we started doing more features and bigger shorts and other kinds of projects, like TV shows and music videos and all kinds of stuff. We were just doing all kinds of different things. And I had a feature that I wanted to do that I had written a few years earlier. And at that point, I think we were around for almost a little over 10 years, or close to 10 years. And so now I'd made a lot of connections at that point. And I just went out and raised money, just private equity from various people, and raised about $200,000 and made the feature. And then after it was made, it did the festival circuit, and it played like second tier festivals, did very well, like, LA Film Festival. That's a big second tier festival, but it's a second tier festival. It wasn't Cannes or Sundance, whatever. And which, by the way, Sundance had a hand in its life in the festival circuit. I didn't know this, but I started getting all these invitations to festivals without even submitting. And they weren't invitations to submit. They were invitations to screen, which is unusual. Usually you get an invitation to submit. And I was like, wow, that's weird. Like, I wonder why I'm getting those. And I was going to the Berlin Film Festival, and John Cooper was in the airport, and he went up to my wife who's an actress and stars in the feature. And he said, "You're the girl from Dog Walker." And she said, "Oh yeah, thank you." He said, you know, I programmed for Sundance. I knew who he was, but he said, "I programmed for Sundance. And I don't know if you want to hear this or not, but that was the very last film we cut. The very last one. It was between that and another film. And I'm sorry, but you know, I love the film though. I thought it was really good. And I recommended it to a ton of festivals. So I'm like, that explains it. All these invitations I was getting. So even if your film doesn't get into a festival, it has value being seen and going through, you know, the selection process, because someone would be a fan of the film or you as a filmmaker, and they talk to each other, obviously, and stuff happens. So then it did this festival circuit, and then we found another set of investors to pay for distribution. And so that's when we decided to, like, okay, let's do some focus groups. Let's figure out how we're going to market this thing. And small indie film. That's how I came into contact with you.
Yes. And what I've seen you do with Filmmakers Alliance is you're very good about, I've been at festivals with you where you are very good about networking. And that's an area I'd like to talk for people in the entertainment business, where it's always good to hear stories about effective networking and making people know who you are. You're a very distinctive looking person, but that goes along with you having a great personality and being very good ingratiating yourself to others. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's not like I can, people have asked me about that, and it's not like I can say, well, this is the formula. I can just tell you how I am and how it suits me. Well, one is that I was at the time, especially, very passionate about filmmaking. I was almost religious about it. So I would talk to anybody about filmmaking and my opinions about films and all that kind of stuff. Just like any new convert is. And I was very happy in my sort of independent film bubble. And so I always wanted to tell people, like, this is where you need to be. This is where you need to express yourself in the truest sense, and blah, blah, blah. And I had a whole spiel that was important to me. But I also like people. So I'm always curious about people and what they're doing and why they're there and who they are, and blah, blah, blah. So I would often be invited to events or go to events like the Sundance Film Festival, whatever. And I'll just start talking to whoever is near me and just, what are you doing here? What's your story? Like, whatever. And it's amazing the people you meet that way. Or if you're in line for a movie, there's people next to you, you know, you just chatting them up. What have you seen? What do you like? You know, and sometimes you made friends and sometimes you made important business contacts and sometimes you made both. And I think whenever you're in a situation where you're surrounded by people who are of like mind or are in the same industry or whatever, there's some sort of symbiosis that can come out of the relationship. It's important to just start talking and start meeting people. And, you know, not everybody's friendly, not everybody's nice. You'll say a few words sometimes to some people and they won't go anywhere, but you have to make the effort because it's all about community. You know, I mean, it's a very collaborative medium and it's a very, you know, the community is a strong part of success in this particular form of creative expression. And so you just really have to get good people around you. And so you have to meet people and you also have to know who people are. Like, who is that? What is that person about? And, you know, how can I be of service to them and how can they be of service to me? That's the other thing too, is I also think always in terms of like, what am I bringing to the table? Not just what can they do for me? Because a one-way street never works. You might get down the street a little ways, but you're not going to get to your final destination. So you have to also be thinking about, you know, what do I bring of value to the community, as well as, you know, what can the community bring to me?
Because I've seen you meet people and then it's almost like you could see a tick go off in your head where you go, I have to introduce you to this person. You're very good about finding out. So I don't know if people confess to you in a sense because you have that thing about you, but you remember, you have a good memory and you remember and you go, hey, if you need help, I know someone who can help you with this.
Yeah, I meet a lot of
So,
different people, and
yeah.
you sort of store it away in your head. I mean, I forget sometimes, like, someone will say, oh, you got to meet this person, they're amazing, and I meet them, and they're amazing. And then 2 weeks later, I'll meet somebody else who needs to meet that person. And I was like, oh, what the hell was there? Where's their card? That happens. But oftentimes, yeah, it's like bouncing around in my head, and I also think I like helping people. It's part of why I still do what I do, even though I have my own sort of filmmaking life and career. Um, I Filmmakers Alliance will always be important to me, or even if there wasn't a Filmmakers Alliance, that sort of connecting thing that you talked about is always important because I get pleasure out of it. Like, it feels good when you like help somebody, even if they acknowledge you or not. Like, it's just like I know that I was help them to get wherever they wanted to go, the next step. And so I like doing it, but it's just a natural part of my personality. Like, oh, I know somebody needs that. You should meet them. And
But the funny thing is, like, I've spent time with you at a bunch of different Sundances, and the one thing, it's like you do a good job of not actually seeing a lot of movies, but not coming off like the guy who doesn't see a lot of movies, because you're always connecting with people at the mixers they have there and the
well,
parties and stuff like
I
that.
don't see a lot of movies, but I am particular about the movies I do see, and I'm passionate about the ones that I like. And
Right.
so I can focus on those, and talk about those, and
I think the point I was trying to make is you see the value. Like, people would go, cool, I'm going to Sundance, I'm going to see a lot of movies. But you're a veteran of going there, and you see the value is more of networking with people. That's kind
yeah,
of the point where I'm
yeah, I see
going.
that, and it's because the movies are the movies. Like, you can see them there, or you can see them elsewhere. Like, you're gonna see them, a lot of them. And I actually, when I do go see movies, I try to focus on the ones that I may not see immediately somewhere else. Although now with all the digital distribution, you see practically everything. But I try to focus on things that I may not see there. But it's really the people all in one place that's unique. And the films themselves, of course, are unique, but seeing them there is not necessarily a unique experience. And sometimes it's not really the greatest experience. So that's not a priority for me to see films there because I can see them.
Being hot, being cold, hot, sweaty, and tired, and watch in a movie theater. But here's something that I kind of want to put out there to people that are watching and listening to us, is that when you go to Sundance and walk up to someone, they'll talk to you, but you can't do it in LA.
No,
It's all about context. Context helps you network with people. But running into a famous director in LA and following them wherever they are, or seeing them at Sundance and walking up, they'll be more talkative to you at Sundance.
Way more talkative.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they'll blow you off in LA, even if you're someone who is not like some obviously strange person trying to pester them. Like, you obviously know their work and you're eloquent and all that stuff. They'll still kind of like the wall up. But at Sundance, totally different thing. And it is context. And not just Sundance, though, like pretty much any festival, the people are more open. Like, you can go up to studio executives can be extraordinarily snobbish, but you see one at smaller festival somewhere, sometimes they come in and talk and stuff, and you go up and talk to them afterwards or at the party afterwards, and they're so open and so willing to connect with you, at least in that space. Now you may get back to LA and say, hey, we met and can we have coffee, and you'll never hear from them again. But you have a moment to like sort of pick their brain at these kinds of festivals. That's why it's good to go. There's a lot of reasons why festivals are great to go to once we can start going to them again.
Other than you go to other types of networking events too, and have the similar kind of experience, right?
Yeah, I rarely go to like networking events because I like to feel like I'm going for something specific, like it's a talk that I'm interested in, or it's a movie that I'm interested in, or it's a cool party where I think the people will be really interesting. And then networking happens out of that. But I never, like, the few events I've gone to that are meant to network are usually just terrible. It's almost like, you know, the way people are about New Year's Eve. There's just so much stuff built into it. You never end up having a good time.
Right.
And when it's the same thing with like networking events, there's so much expectation and need that it ends up feeling tense and forced and like it's I just always think it's better to like go to something that you have a purpose to be at other than just meet other people, and then start meeting other people, you know, and then you do have something organic to talk about, which is the reason you're there, and not just like, who are you? I mean, it's amazing to me how many people are just I don't know, maybe they're just like socially awkward and they don't really know how to, and so they just walk up to you and go, what's your name? Who are you? And how can you help me? Essentially, they may not use those exact words. And you don't really want to talk to someone like that. You're like, you know.
I mean, people can spot, I mean, body language says a lot, but in my experience, I've been on both sides of it as an attendee and as a person that was there and, you know, for people to talk to. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that you have to be a little more spontaneous with the way you deal with these situations.
Yeah, and if someone asks you a question that's thoughtful and intelligent, like you want to talk to them. Like it's exciting. You don't run from them. So if there's something of value in the actual action, then of course you like talking to people. Like, I mean, at least I do. But it's just when, you know, there's no agenda other than what can you do for me, then it's and unfortunately that runs rampant here in LA.
I think where I want to kind of go with our conversation also is to kind of hear about the successes of Filmmakers Alliance, because I think even recently you've had a lot of alums have some great success, right?
Yeah, we've had over the years, I mean, like we've been around, like I said, for, oh my God, it's not 25, 28 years, started in 93. And we've had many people come and go, and some of those people have gone on to have like pretty awesome careers. And in various things, like there's a whole sort of contingent of people who are doing really well on television. Like, you know, Hanali Culpepper, you know, she's a huge TV director now.
She's the person that did Picard.
Yes,
no?
First female director to do a Star Trek.
Yeah, but she directed the pilot episode and several episodes of.
Yeah, and she's done a lot of big shows. Like she works all the time, very much in demand, very talented, sweet, lovely person.
Did she land a feature recently too, or no, am I wrong?
Perhaps, I don't know. I haven't spoken to her in a bit, but
yeah.
She started with a feature, like which she did through Filmmakers Alliance. You know, at different times we've had money to fund things, usually shorts, but we had a feature fund a couple different times, and one of the first film we did was hers. And
what's the name of it?
Within.
Yeah.
And you know, so a lot of work led from that. She did a great job. Again, she's very talented, but also just very smart and sharp and sweet and just great all around. She's like a model filmmaker. Like if you were to construct a filmmaker, you would want her to be Hanali. And then, you know, then we had a whole other contingent, and then there's a bunch of other people working in TV doing really well. Then had a whole other contingent that did like sort of indie features. I haven't heard much from that group. They had their heyday in like the early 2000s, late 1990s. And they're still working in various places, but not as prolifically as they once were. And then we had a whole other contingent that did reality TV. And like they're all showrunners and have shows that they've been doing for years. And pretty much every big reality show you can think of has some Filmmakers Alliance connection to it. So it's like people just went off and did all their things. They came there, they made what they wanted to make, usually shorts and indie features. Sometimes other stuff, and then they went off and, you know, started their careers from there. And a lot of them I stay in touch with, you know, like they were they're my friends. So it's not just the community that goes beyond just the filmmaking, as much as
Right.
possible.
No, it's a family situation, because when we're in these kind of Zoom, I've been in these Zooms where it's mainly it's probably like 30% talk film. The rest is
Yeah.
about just regular stuff.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
what I would like to do is take the rest of our time and open it up to anyone who might want to ask some questions. Do we have anyone there that is interested in asking Jacques a question?
Let's see.
If anyone would like to
Yes.
submit one in the chat, or can turn on their mic and say something. Anybody?
There's only 4 people.
Not a few people, but well, I
do.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm late to the party.
Okay.
I had a question about, well, I have 2 questions. Can I ask
Sure.
both right now?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay. When you started your film career, or your filmmaking career in the industry, and you were making, I believe you said right around that time you started the Alliance, and y'all were trying to make the films that you wanted to make, that you were, I guess, really passionate about. How did you go about getting like the funding for that, and getting the support and rally around that to go into like from pre-production to production for a lot of your early work?
Yeah, it was different for different films. We had a couple of members who were connected to money, so it was easier for them.
That's my first question.
Yeah, and then for me, I was not connected to money, and I always tell all filmmakers this: if you want to make stuff, you want to actually make stuff, and not like write a script and hope somebody gives you money, but actually, okay, I wrote it, now I'm going to make it. Then you have to make something that is realizable. Like you scale it to your available resources. So can I raise $5,000? Sure. So I'm going to make something that's $5,000. People have done $5,000 features, but I would do a short probably. And back then that's what I did. Like I knew I could raise a couple $1,000s from garage sales. And, this was way before, GoFundMe and Kickstarter. So, we would have garage sales. We would just ask friends and relatives for money. And I figured I could raise, $2,000-$3,000. So I made a short that I know I could do for $2,000-$3,000. And then once you have that short, then the next thing you do, you can usually raise a little bit more money because you have something to show them. Oh, here's what I did. And if you do a good job, then it's going to get more people excited. And usually the people that supported you in the first one will support you in the next one. And that's the story for me. So my projects got a little bigger, a little more complex, a little more expensive with each project until I did a feature. And then once you have a feature, then you're on the scene. Then there's people who are outside your circle who are going to see your film and are going to come and show their support for you. So that was the way it was for me. It was kind of a step ladder, and based on starting where I knew I could start. Scaling the project to the resources I knew that I had available to me. Sometimes you don't know what that is. Like you'll write something, you just want to make it, and you realize, oh, this is going to cost $50,000. I can't raise $50,000, so I'm going to go find something that I know I can make. But I was very clear in my head, like, okay, I know I can get what I can get. I could have raised more probably, but I didn't want to ever ask people for more money than I felt comfortable taking, because you never want people like knocking on your door, like, I gave you my last $500, man. I need it back. Like that's just, you don't want that. It's very stressful and it just doesn't feel good. So, he's like, what can you, I can give you $75. And they never, whatever happens to the project, it's, they're fine. So So I was looking around and I was like, okay, I could probably raise $2,000-3,000. So my first short was around $2,000-3,000, and I did a good enough job that it was able that I could use it to raise money for the next thing I did, and then the next thing.
You have any other questions for Jacques, or that's good?
Yeah, she had a second one.
Yeah, I had a second question. And that was just around the festival circuit. You were talking about like the second tier circuit, and so I just had a question about like once you get a couple of your films going and you want to enter them, how do you go about doing that?
I happen to have also been a festival programmer for the LA Film Festival for many years. So I see both the filmmaker side and the programmer side. And basically the best thing that you can do is just go through the regular submission process. Because most festivals, the most good festivals, they take every submission seriously because they're trying to find good work that not everybody else has seen. They're trying to find a new fresh face. They're trying to find, something that hasn't been seen before. So they take it pretty seriously. And if you push too hard, it's a turnoff to programmers. So I get a lot of filmmakers who are like, hey, can you call so-and-so at Sundance? And like, no, I can't really, because they're not going to do anything. If it just makes their job harder and more uncomfortable. Just go through the regular submission process. Once you do that, though, then I can say to them, oh, my friend submitted this film and it's a good film. But I can't go to them first and say, hey, take a look at this film. You just have to go through the normal process. But you want to do your research about the festivals. You want to find festivals that are programming or have a history of programming the type of stuff that you're doing. So if you're making children's film, or you're making like a really, I don't think Sundance doesn't have a children's film block.
They do some morning things.
Okay. But for a while they didn't, and they certainly don't do more mainstream type. So if you make those kinds of projects, it's probably not the best festival to try and showcase your work or waste your time submitting to. But there is a festival that will be good for that. Pretty much there's a festival for any type of film you can make. And you want to know what those are and build a community there. Because like once people start seeing your work, and the reaction to the work will then dictate what happens next for you. So, and you'd be surprised who's in the audience, who can be meaningful to you, or who's on the programming team, or who is going to be aware of your film. You have no control over, and sometimes it's a pretty magical experience how someone can come out of nowhere and like, I love your film. And that happened to me with my feature, The Dog Walker. Somebody saw it, and that's how I got that other chunk of money to do distribution, which was not insignificant. I got like $300,000 to distribute it. And it was just a rich dude who saw it and said, why isn't other people seeing this? I'm like, because I don't have distribution. Well, let's take care of that. Let me write you a check. And so, yeah, so a lot of good things can come out of the festival experience. But yeah, getting into them is just regular submission is like the best thing that you can do, but submitting to the appropriate festivals. And if you have a contact to a programmer, then maybe you can reach out to that contact after you've submitted. What you do want to do is sort of get it past the first tier of screeners who can just say no. You'd like to get it in the hands of a person who can say yes.
Can I ask a little, just a follow up?
Sure.
How important is networking to like the start of your career, or like
extremely
when you're like
extremely
doing the DIYing your own?
You'd be surprised. You'd be
and
surprised how much just personal magnetism plays into various things, why people want to work on your project, why they want to give you resources, even why they want to program your film. When I was sitting in the programming room as a programmer with that, I'll just say this, like I'll put it out there, like you'd see two films that were both good and, both had good reasons for, or perhaps different, but good reasons for being in the festival. where you're like, this filmmaker's an asshole. This one is really cool. And like, so of course you want to support that one. Like, it does make a difference when all other things being equal. Yeah, you definitely like, and it's the same way like working on films and attracting talent or raising money. Like people, your own personal magnetism goes a long way in finding support for your films and getting into the right places and moving your career along. When I was starting to do a lot of work and needed people for different things, I always remembered somebody who I just thought was smart and cool, and I wanted to plug them in wherever I could. Like, okay, call them up, here's something that's perfect for you. And you want to do it, it feels good. Like and it's amazing how the right people can move you forward very quickly. I'll tell you a quick anecdote. I got a job on this independent film as a production assistant, and in San Francisco when I was very young. I wasn't even out of college yet. And it was just a total shit show. It totally disorganized and messy, and they never paid people on time. And I was just like, I got to get out of this thing. And I came home, and my roommate had just moved from Colorado, and he wanted to break into. I was quitting. He goes, well, can I take that job? I'm like, you don't want that job. He goes, I just need to do something. I got to meet some people. I'm like, okay. So he took the job. He bonded with the production manager, and she then hired him on every subsequent job. And she worked her way up till she got a huge job at Lucasfilm and hired him. And he worked at Lucasfilm for 20 something years, had this amazing career. And just through his relationship with her, and it wasn't romantic, she was married. It was just, she liked his work and thought he was a great guy. And so she just took him everywhere, and he had an amazing career. So yeah, and he got that opportunity because he knew me, so you just know people, and you never know where it can go.
I have another question for you. Someone submitted. They want to thank you for joining us, and they want to know, as it relates to the independent movie marketplace, mm-hmm. Do you feel that those types of movies are more accessible with all things streaming?
What types of movies? Like sort of
the independent, the types of where you come from, and
I think they're more available. I don't know how accessible they are. I mean, it still comes down to marketing, and when you've got all these choices, what's going to get people to tune into your film? I'll be honest and say I don't even understand the indie distribution landscape these days. Like obviously with COVID, people aren't going to theaters, and that was not a good place for indie filmmakers anymore anyway. Like getting butts in the seats is for a relatively obscure indie film is almost impossible, as Rob will tell you. And so there's all these streaming services and there's platforms, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people will come see a film. It doesn't mean that you'll get paid anything meaningful to have it distributed on any of these platforms. And I haven't been involved in that in quite some time. So I actually am interested in figuring out how it works nowadays for indie films, because I'm still passionate about people making stuff that is unique to their own, their personal aesthetic. So they're not just making stuff that they think will play on Netflix or that will get them a job doing this or that, or like they're passionate. They have a vision. They have something to say that's only they can say. I'm still passionate about that kind of work. And I always will believe that there's an audience for it if it's done well and people know their craft. And so I'll always be a champion of that kind of work. But I do have to do my own homework to be that champion. I have to do my own homework to figure out how they can make a living doing that, and how their work gets out into the world as well.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and speaking to everyone, Jacques. Before we knew it, it's been an hour. So I appreciate you coming in and imparting your wisdom on everyone. Great stories.
Yes.
And
I want to thank these people for being so still and cool while I'm doing
there's
this.
something that looks like there's something very interesting in the corner of that room.
I don't know what's in there.
I don't know. It might blind our eyes. But thank you.
My pleasure.
And everyone at the LA Film School thanks you. So we appreciate it.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone who tuned in and listened.
All right.